Hello and welcome to the CEO Blindspots show, where leaders lead leaders. I'm your host, Birgit Kamps, and today's guest is Fay Goldstein, the CEO of Folio.Build, a company that is supercharging manufacturing sales with an AI platform. Welcome to the show, Fay.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so grateful that our mutual friend, Tanya Tylovich connected us because she said that Faye's an amazing leader who's got strong core values. And she said, and Faye has a passion for solving problems. And then when I looked at your background, I saw that your family was, or is maybe still, in manufacturing and distribution, and that you yourself at one point worked at an automotive AC compressor shop. So I was wondering, how did that impact your leadership and your current interest in Folio.Build?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually, up until I was truly building what we're building now, Folio, and we're in the manufacturing distribution space, I honestly hadn't given a second thought of my summer job in college. I was just one of those college students trying to, pay my way, make sure that I was supporting myself and having enough money in my pocket. And my best friend's uncle owned this condenser and compressor shop. They were repairing these parts, and they were really just looking for smart, cheap labor. And there I was, smart enough, cheap labor. And I was really tasked by writing out these product descriptions and helping put that onto their eBay store at that point. And it's funny because I look back and I look back at my Facebook photos, and at that same generation and that same era, I was having tons of photos of cool cars that I had liked. It ended up being really helpful in the long term because my first part of my career was in politics, but when I shifted into tech, my first job ended up being in an automotive telematics data and cybersecurity company. And so I had already had a little bit of understanding the jargon between OEMs and tier ones and tier two suppliers and what does it look like to have all of these different parts. But to be frank, I didn't think about it until recently when I really had to think back of like, where did my passion for real physical things come from? And I remembered it was back there in this condenser and compressor shop in Miami, in the heat, in the summer, in college.
Hands-on experience. And then you could say in the old days then that there were not a lot of women who would have been involved in that. And here
No.
and even now, and as a CEO, there's not a lot of women CEOs on my podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm also curious, how did you evolve yourself in that world that typically doesn't have a lot of women?
I'm not a big believer in this concept of birth order, but I think there is something to it. I'm the eldest of six. Underneath me are four boys and then a youngest sister. And I think I was kind of almost born into this role almost of I just had to take responsibility for things. And it forced me to quite early on be a decision maker in a lot of, at that point, really male dominated spaces, dominated by my younger brothers, but male dominated spaces. And I had always felt comfortable in roles of leadership, running for student council in school, being involved in student government in university, leaving school and running straight to a leadership role in nonprofit. It seems natural to me, and I think a lot of it has come from me being kind of put into that position as a young child and being comfortable in that role of deciding things and saying if I wasn't going to be the decision maker, there wasn't going to be someone that could step into those shoes for me at that stage. So I just kind of needed to step up.
Yeah. Wow. So it was kind of like a sink or swim situation. Sounds like you learned to be a leader by trial and error.
Don't we all, though? I mean, I don't think anyone, they always have these like CEO schools or something you can go and learn how
Yeah.
to, get leadership skills. And I think there is very much a lot that I've learned. And I think that's one of the challenges is how much of your leadership do you rely on your natural innate ability to make decisions versus how much of your core strengths do you need to actually hone in on and really kind of move or train yourself to do things even differently than you naturally would in a leadership role to become an even better leader. There's certain things that I probably naturally would want to do that I'm like, that's not exactly the best way to be doing things currently as running a company. You may be able to do that when you're running, I don't know, a student government, let's say, or running a shop or even leading a team when you're not the CEO, but that looks very different when you're actually making a lot different type of decisions as a CEO. So it's also a struggle there.
Yeah.
natural abilities versus where do you want to actually take and gain skill.
Yes. So what is an example of when you discovered something you were doing as a leader that wasn't working, that maybe you could help other leaders with, right? Learning through you.
Listen, I'm still learning. I'm young. I'm still at the pretty early days of really being a leader. I think what I've discovered, and I'm still learning now, and it's even growing as my team expands or as I hire more, is I used to really think that if you put more pressure on people and you sit there and say, listen, like, we just got to hustle. You got to get your stuff done. You're not pulling your weight. You got to just get it done. That would like light this fire under them. And then all of a sudden the next day they'd be like fantastic and all of a sudden proving their worth. Because that's kind of how I worked. If someone would be like, Faye, you're not showing up, you're not doing well, like my natural reaction was like, oh no, I better really, really hustle 10,000 times harder and get this done. Um, I'm realizing now that doesn't necessarily work with everybody. And just because I'm calling, let's say, my team members out or my employees out or asking, be like, listen, we've got a deadline and you haven't been pulling your weight, you got to pull your weight over the next few days. Me having that conversation doesn't necessarily lead them to make those changes. I have to figure out other ways to do it, which means maybe actually being a lot more specific about what does that change look like? What do I expect? Maybe building out tasks. I'm not good at writing other people's tasks. And I've learned that. Thank goodness I have a co-founder that is incredibly fantastic at building out very, very structured processes for people. I'm not. I'm a show up and make, in Hebrew, a balagan, meaning make things move. I'm not very good at structuring things for other people. And so I've realized me assigning tasks to people is not a strength of mine. I need to figure out how to do that, or I need to give that to my co-founder and say, listen, I can't handle the day-to-day management of, let's say, the teams and giving them tasks, not a strength of mine. My strength is, big picture things. Let's hustle. Let's just get shit done. Pardon that. But that's really how I work. And so I have to learn how to balance that. Not always that easy.
Yeah, well, it sounds like one of your success formulas is to make sure you partner with people that have the complementary skills to you, right? Because it's classic. A lot of CEOs are visionary, big picture thinkers, but then someone needs to execute. So how did you decide to partner with? I think his name is Amir,
Yeah.
the founder.
I went on more than I would say 100-ish or so co-founder dates when I was looking for a co-founder. And it was about around my like 40th or so that I realized I needed to write down my, kind of wish list in a sense. And I realized that there were some big non-negotiables that I needed to come into the conversation with knowing internally. And I realized that there was like this one core baseline was that and I was looking particularly for someone that had a technical background. So this was hard to really decide what do you look, especially when you're not technical, what do you look for in a technical co-founder? Are you looking at like their level of code abilities? You're looking at how well they know databases. You're looking at, how well they know core, technologies. And I just realized that no matter what the technical skills were of my co-founder, I wanted someone that would speak to me about customers first. And I wanted someone that would partner with me to ask me, why are you building what you're building? Why are we building what we're building? What are the customer pains that we're going to be solving? What is the world that we're going into? And ask me a lot more about the big picture things, even though I knew that they would be the ones to have to be the executor of things. I wanted them to be a partner with me in understanding the importance of the big picture things, because I think that I had too many conversations in these early co-founder dates with somebody that wanted to talk about like how we're going to start coding things right away and like building out the architecture right away. And I was like, listen, like we didn't even have conversations with our, potential customers. We don't even really know the problem that we're properly solving. And we're already starting to have conversations about how we want to build this thing. And I realized the right partner for me would be someone that I can sit and have big picture conversations with, but then would be able to put those big picture conversations into actual practical actions.
Yeah.
And I met my co-founder actually not intending to even partner with him as a co-founder. We ended up just talking about big picture problems. And I so loved the way he engaged with me in those conversations. And he tried to connect me to other potential co-founders, and I kept on being like, thank you, Amir, but like that one doesn't work, this one doesn't work, this one doesn't work. And then one day I was just like, Amir, but what about you? You know? And
Yes.
and and thankfully he said yes.
Yeah. And
It's been
thankfully,
a
it
journey.
sounds like you picked someone who had great listening skills and interest in customer service.
Great listening skills and customer service, but also great patience for a CEO that is very much me, like
Yeah.
I really I you need to be a good listener. I think a lot. I think big. I talk a lot. I want to have discussions about a lot of things. Again, something I'm working on, possibly a blind spot of mine is bigger conversations rather than smaller, shorter answers. It's something as a natural communicator I do struggle with is how long-winded should my answers be when I can answer in 2 words or less.
Yes.
Hence like this conversation. And
Well, and your
thankfully,
background also is in marketing and storytelling.
yes.
So I can imagine there's the plus and the minus of that when you're,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. Well, you are in an industry that also seems to have a blind spot. Do you want to say something about what makes your company unique or a pioneer in your industry?
It's interesting because it's an industry that is really well known, but I would say really not well known at the exact same time as everyone knows manufacturing. Everyone knows industry. Everyone knows when you're, going and building something, you need machines to build it. When you're going and there's a new plane and there's an issue, you're going to blame it on the people that built the plane. There's a big world out there. It's a $39 trillion global industry in manufacturing. It's quite a massive industry, but what's fascinating, I think, in my space and what we're really honing in on is that a lot of people are talking about manufacturing in terms of the actual, and I divide it, I'm going to actually show my arm here. I divide it into like the soft part and the hard part of the manufacturing floor. A lot of people are talking about the hard floors, right? Not the carpeted floors. This is where the actual manufacturing takes place, where they're building the things, where they're actually going and putting on the sensors and the robots, and they're actually going, and it's like behind those double sealed doors, super noisy. People walk in with earplugs. That's where the action takes place. And that's where a lot of people are optimizing right now, is they're saying, we're going to build robots, we're going to build sensors, we're going to have predictive maintenance on these machines. Incredible. Definitely much needed in this space to really optimize it. I think what's also very far ignored, though, when there's so many companies are focusing on this, are the people behind that door on the soft carpeted side, the back office people, the people that are sitting at their desks that are still in this day and age doing all of these processes really manually. They're
Hmm.
still selling manually. They're still invoicing manually. They're still working on Excels and PowerPoints and physical data sheets. And so we see this opportunity that especially in the US, as manufacturing is brought more near shored, as people are moving more things and saying, we want to have, especially with supply chain disruptions, we want to have more manufacturing happening here on our borders or close enough with our allies. There's going to be optimized processes of building more things. You
Hmm.
also need to optimize for selling those things, for processing those sales, for supporting the team that is really, again, sitting at desks and doing these processes still manually and don't yet have a robot to help them with these things. And so that's really what we're building, is we're trying to supercharge those go-to-market and sales teams and finally give them the robot that they deserve, because it shouldn't only be for the actual plants itself, but it should be for the people that are working in the offices there.
Yeah. Well, that I think you explained that very well. That was easy to understand, right? But I'm curious, when you were reflecting on your own leadership, right? The way you were led successfully was different than some of your team members, and what motivates them is different. I also understand that in the manufacturing space, well, you could say anywhere really, that in sales there's the old timers who do it one way, and then you've got the new ones who tend to do a lot more through email, text, or AI. How would your product, I guess, help both?
It's interesting because that's a really big product question that myself and my co-founder were asking ourselves. On one hand, we're building a very, very modern product. It's heavily based on data and AI. We're ingesting tons and tons of information and really putting out incredible outputs for these sales teams. But then we realize, like, in the end of the day, the people that are still going to be using this are going to be, 50, 60-year-old men, possibly from the Midwest, typically going out in the field from manufacturing plant to manufacturing plant. How do we make sure that they're not scared or nervous about this new experience that they're going to be having. And there's a few things that we realized we needed to do. Number one, we spent time really asking them what are the current tools that they're using. They were using Excel, they were using PowerPoint, they were using PDF data sheets. Now, we had a choice at this point, a junction that we needed to decide. Did we want to be building a very modern, San Francisco-y, super startup-y type of interface, which would be really cool, really sexy for investors, really exciting for a lot of people, except for our actual users? We realized our actual users really expected things to feel like things that they were currently using, and all of a sudden somehow be way more magical than what they were used to, but still feel like something not too scary. And so we actually designed our interface counterintuitively to feel old. It's very modern. It's built on top of a very, very, very modern, I would say, data infrastructure and AI engine. But the way that the user interface is still something that feels like editing a PowerPoint, still feels like managing PDFs, still feels like dealing with Excel sheets, because we understood that if we force these users that were used to working in a certain way to go too far from their typical workflow, the onboarding and retention would just be very hard to maintain, or very hard to really, bring them onto our platform. And so
Yeah.
it was a big product decision. You know, it's still difficult for some of our users now, because it's still, even though it still feels like something they're used to, it's still a learning curve. And that's also why we're building it in the way that we're 100% available for them. We're really building it from the ground up with our early adopters right now, so they could really understand how to make use of it in the best way possible,
Yeah.
and to be built into their natural ways of doing things. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off because we're seeing both this older generation now, they actually are using it because it feels comfortable for them, and then the younger generation that are taking over as well, or being brought in to lead the charge, see behind the scenes and see the magic in the output as well. So I think we're on the right path.
Yeah. I did look at your website and I saw some of the feedback you've gotten, some of the testimonials. And so it does look like a lot of people are looking forward to continuing to use your product and work with you. And it sounds like you also employ great listening with your customers, and that you adjust accordingly. I saw on your website that people can book a demo. Is that still available for interested people?
100%, 100%. And, let's just keep it that 100%. And I'm excited about it because it's going to be a personalized demo. Also, Folio is built in a way that when we demo it for you, you actually could see it working with almost some of your own data, some of your own publicly available data. So it's quite personalized already.
Wonderful. So then I guess, if we look at the future, you mentioned yourself, we're now a lot of companies are bringing things back in locally, and the workforce is changing. What, as you customize things, I can imagine that's challenging, right? Customizing, yet making it, in a way that everyone can use it. So how do you do the balance between customizing leadership for everyone who's different in their style, and customizing your product for each customer? How do you manage that balance in a way that works for them and you?
So customizing the product is a little bit easier than customizing leadership, I would say, because customizing the product, we're building an AI product, and that means that there is so much more flexibility in how it interacts with individualized customer data, and how it interacts with the individualized needs of their buyers or their customers. And that's exactly the magic of Folio. We basically are able to ingest all of the customer and all of the, let's say, the manufacturer's data points and all of the specs and details about their products. We ingest it, we understand it. The database is built around their data, so it's automatically custom built around how they already exist in their space. And then what Folio does is it understands their customers' contacts, their customers' needs, their customers', technical requirements. And they say, okay, well, let's say we are a packaging company, and we have all these different ways of building all these big, massive packaging machines. We want to close a deal with a lumber company that needs our packaging machines to wrap a specific size lumber in a specific type of warehouse, in a specific type of weather conditions. Philly was able to understand those needs and only choose the correct product and then reframe the value of that product specifically for that industrial buyer. That's what our product does. So that, again, that customization, it comes naturally to us. The customization of leadership is a very different conversation because I am not an AI bot. I'm learning constantly and consistently. Leadership comes into play both when it comes to me being at the helm of an early stage startup. I needed to show leadership in terms of fundraising, in terms of customers, in terms of building with my co-founder, managing my co-founder relationship, managing our employees, managing local employees versus remote employees. Every single one of those leadership hats per se, I have to context switch all the time. And I feel like every CEO or any leader anywhere understands the difficulty in context switching because you can't just put on one hat and take off the other one. It's literally a split second decision of how do I want to react to this with this person versus the other. It's a learning.
Yeah, and I love how you distinguished, right, AI that can help in one area, not always in the human area. But so if we go to the customization that your company's providing or the magic, as you said, I got to see the time savings that your company provides for manufacturing sales people, right? Because like you said, they can access it anywhere where they go, but they can also almost instantly, I would say, customize their feedback to the customer. So that saves a lot of time for people. As leaders, though, there's a lot of leaders who are struggling with their time, and their answer is sleepless hours. So how do you manage customizing leadership and saving time yourself or taking care of your own well-being as a leader?
I may not be the best person to answer that. I'm still in the camp of sleepless, but I have recognized that there are times that I work better than others. I've recognized more of how to split my day. I feel very comfortable having later evening meetings. I also really like starting my day. I'm not a 5 a.m. person. I wish I was. Maybe I will be one day, but I'm not. I like starting off the day 8 o'clock. I want to be in the office. I want to be ready to rock and roll, but I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. to go run. So I think, you always read these books of like, that's what the millionaire, billionaire CEOs do is they're up at 5 a.m., they're meditating. Maybe that's maybe that's what I need to be doing. But right now I'm kind of in this just like a hustle mode. I have learned that I need to take weekends though. I have taken weekends, and this is a new thing because I wasn't functioning for a little bit and I was working and working and working. I need to take weekends, and I take weekends, and every week for the past few months, I've been trying to go out in nature. I've been trying to find trees. I've been trying to be under the sky and out of the city. And it gives me the strength to really start my week with a breath, literally, of fresh air, actually. I think things will get easier. I'm hoping, at least balancing work-life balance as the company grows, as things become a little bit more stable. Obviously, bigger challenges will come up, but I'm hoping I learn that. And maybe, I should listen to more of your episodes of your podcast to learn a little bit how to have a better work-life balance and make more time for myself because I'm not so good at it.
Well, I appreciate your confession about your own struggle with that and your interest in listening to other leaders. And I will say that a lot of leaders are struggling with this. So I will continue asking that question, but I appreciate, Faye, you sharing everything that you've already shared. Your insights have been great. And you obviously have kept developing yourself as a leader if you look at your background and everything you have done. So I appreciate you willing to contribute to other leaders today. I know they can go to Folio.Build to find out more about your company. And, thank you for still allowing them to book demos. And best wishes with you and your travels, because I think you're about to go to Germany for a big
Yes.
manufacturing event there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we're flying to Germany. I had a round trip flight, and then another opportunity came in to go to another trade show to meet with another customer. And I had to make a decision. That was a leadership decision, actually. Do I now spend an extra $500 to change my flight so I can go meet a potential one new customer? And I had to balance that out. I decided to take the risk, and hopefully we'll be there. I'm gonna be at 2 trade shows in Germany actually now.
Wow.
Hopefully meeting with extra people, and excited about it. So yeah.
Great. So if we have listeners in Germany, they should hook up with you then, so to speak, at the show.
Yes,
All
exactly. I'll
right.
be in Miami next week as well. So if anyone's in
Very good.
Miami the week of March 3rd until March 11th, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Faye, for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.